If you're just starting a business and you're already worried about self-doubt, you're gonna get destroyed. The easiest part of a business is starting the business. What are you willing to sacrifice to get there, and what are your non-negotiables? You make those lists, you can build a business around anything. Parents who are absolutely 1000% failing their kids.
What are some of the basic rituals you do in the home to keep that intimacy and to keep that relationship strong with your family?
Kids are being raised without values. Parents are scared of their kids. They're being scared of being canceled by their kids. They're being raised off a TikTok type of environment. I mean, just yesterday, you had TikTok go viral with the Osama bin Laden letter after 9/11, where kids are now praising Osama bin Laden, using him as a symbol of freedom. I mean, this is like coming from, like, the parents did no good job teaching them about history, giving them any sorts of values, raising them properly. There's just such an abdication of lack of responsibility. The kids are going on campuses and they're spewing whatever they want. They want to feel like they're part of a cause. They want to feel like they're part of something. They're trying to change the world. I get that. But at the same time, we're doing a really, really bad job raising good humans. And I think the reason why we see that is there's just a lack, there's a breakdown of values being taught in the house, of raising your kids with the right value, and just again, like an abdication of responsibility from the parents. And you see it, and you go back to when I grew up, we were raised with good values, we were raised on a certain way, and it has nothing to do with beliefs. You can believe one thing and believe the other, but when you take away raising your kids with values, and you're now abdicating the role of being a parent to your kid and letting your kid decide how they, like, the parent's scared of being canceled by their own kid, by saying the wrong thing, by offending your own kid. That should never be the case. And I think a lot of times what you're seeing right now is just parents doing a really, really bad job raising their kids. So I look around and I see the kids on college campuses, and I see half of them don't even know what they're standing for. There's this feeling of being lost, that they need to cling to anything, any sense of belonging. And so I blame the parents. Like, as much as you want to blame the youth, I blame the parents, because they did a really shitty job raising their kids. I think that's how, like, cults are formed, right? So you kind of look at it the same way. But at the same time, like, I don't know, parenting is such a hard thing for me to judge on, because there's so many different ways you can parent a kid. But if you look around and you see the youth now, whether they're eating Tide Pods or they're just completely uneducated about topics and choosing, they're just lost. And whose fault is that? Something went wrong. So it's either the school system is failing the kids, which that's a completely different topic, or the parents fail the kids. And I'm a firm believer that it all begins at home. Everything begins at home.
You're a father of 4 or 3?
3.
What are some of the basic rituals you do in the home to keep that intimacy and to keep that relationship strong with your family?
It's hard. My kids are young, so it's very easy to keep family dynamics together and make sure that we do things as a family and keep the core family unit strong. When they get older and they start resisting that a little bit more, then you'll probably have a little bit more difficulty. But just raise them with respect for other people, raise them with empathy, raise them for caring for people, raise them to have a sense of gratitude for where we are. Every night when I put my son to bed, because he's the oldest and he could get rid, every time we put my son to bed, first thing I ask him before bedtime is, what are you grateful for? What did you do today that made you happy? What did you learn today? But we start with the grateful part, because that's where it all begins. You instill those things, and hopefully as you go along, that becomes part of the nucleus of how you raise a family. I just hope my kids don't become shitty humans and eat Tide Pods. But aside from that, like, one of the things we do, like, for example, just the value system of, you go outside right now and you see people not saying thank you, not saying please, not doing any of those things. We walk into school, my son says good morning to the security guard, says thank you to the person opening the door for them. And if they don't, like, he's 5, he'll forget, and sometimes he resists. I tell him to, and I explain the importance of it. It's not just like, say thank you. I'm like, that man's here to protect you. That man's here to make you safe. Say thank you, thank you. That person opened the door for you. He's waited for you. You should say thank you. Thank you. He's holding the door open so you could walk in. You should say thank you. Thank you. So I try to teach him the reasons behind all those things, because I don't want him to grow up to be a shitty human.
What do you think about, there's a lot of business coaches out there. Some of them have great business advice, but terrible family lives. What would you say to someone seeking a coach who is trying to decide, like, the life they want to live and who they want to take advice from?
Well, do you want to have a good family life? If no, then follow the guy coach with the shitty family life, right? So it's knowing what you want. I think when I first got married, I told my wife, all right, I'm going to be building the business. Here's what we're going to have to sacrifice. Here's what we're going to be prepared to do. We had those conversations, and we never had to sacrifice those things because deep down, I never wanted to sacrifice those things, so I just didn't. It was the talk because back then, that's what you were told. That's the way I was taught. You have to sacrifice. There's going to be moments you're going to have to give things up for family and not be there for family events, and you're going to have to go build. But when you have that conflicting opposing value of like, okay, that's what I'm taught to do, but I really don't want to do it, you're just not going to do it. You're going to do what you truly believe in. So a lot shifted for me around family. So I think you start with what do you want? Why do you want it? What are you willing to sacrifice to get there? And what are your non-negotiables? You make those lists, you can build a business around anything. Can you build a $400 billion business, working 1 hour a day and always being there for your kids and never missing one event for your kids? Probably not. But if your non-negotiable is, I'm show up to every kid's soccer game no matter what, I'm at bedtime no matter what, then you start making decisions around there. And then you can't be mad if your business isn't at a certain level because you weren't willing to pay the cost. So if you're like, my business is not here, I want it to get there, well, are you willing to pay the cost to get there? It was very hard for me. It was a very hard thing to do in the sense of like, my calendar was all over the map. I was taught being busy is a good thing. You should always be busy. Busy, busy. Never any blank space in your calendar. Don't have any blank space in your calendar. It should be filled. But busyness is laziness. And I had one of my first coaches who was like, I'm not getting to this level. I'm not getting to this level. I'm not here. He's like, first thing he said to me is open up your calendar. And I opened up my calendar. He goes, that's why you can't get anything done. He looked at it right away. He goes, that's why you can't get. One of my first coaches, like, that's why you can't get anything done. So when I first hired my first assistant ever, their first job was to take care of the calendar, manage my calendar, protect my time. And then you build it in. You build in like, these are days that I want to be completely into work. These are days where I want to focus on work and not in work. This is a recovery day. And then you slowly start buying back your time. Like Dan Martell talks about it a lot. You slowly start buying back your time and you slowly start, delegating things that you shouldn't be doing so that you can focus on your zone of genius in order to do it. But filling up your calendar for the sake of filling your calendar is one of the worst pieces of advice that I've ever received. Also, it's very easy when you're single to say, okay, I'm gonna go travel, I'm gonna go do all this, I'm gonna sacrifice. You don't really have much to sacrifice. If you're single, go all in on your business. I wish I could have back 20 years and go back 20 years ago, 30 years ago with the knowledge I have now and go all in and would have gone all in then, because that's the time to do it. That's the time where you could afford to make the mistakes. You could go to zero and it really has no effect because you could build back up with enough time. As you start getting older and more responsibilities, you get married, right? Now you're thinking for two people, not just one person anymore. So anytime you're willing to be like, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice and take this risk. Are you really? You're not just worried about you anymore. I could go back down to zero and rebuild, but you have a partner. Is she willing to go, or is he willing to go down to zero to build with you again? Then you get to the next level and you have kids, and you become even more risk adverse as you go along. So everything changes at certain levels that you're at. So I think knowing where you're at, what level you're at, what you're willing to pay, what you're willing to sacrifice at those moments changes. I'm willing to sacrifice a lot when I'm single because I got time on my side. I got no responsibilities. Get married. I'm willing to sacrifice a lot more than when I have kids, but less than when I was alone, because now if I'm being a good partner to my person, I'm thinking about them and not just about me. Then you have a kid, and it's like, whoa, wait. I don't want to do anything. What happens if this does go down to zero? I'm confident in my ability to rebuild, but what happens to my kids? How are they gonna have to adjust? How does life look like? What life am I building for them right now? And you start thinking about it a bit differently. So then you end up making decisions a bit differently, which is why, like, anytime I meet like an 18-year-old or I come to events like this and I'm talking to someone and they're like, yeah, I'm all in and growing my business, but I don't know if I should do this. I'm like, how old are you? Like, I'm 23. I'm like, dude, all in, gamble, roll the dice, try, taste as much as you can, because I'm in my 40s and you don't want to look back and be like, man, I should have, I wish I could have. And that's like the worst place to operate out of. If you're just starting a business and you're already worried about self-doubt, you're gonna get destroyed. If you just started and you're worried, man, it gets harder from here. The easiest part of a business is starting the business. Anyone could go register a name, say, hey, I'm selling, but do people wanna buy it? So if you're already like just started your business and you're right at the front being like, man, I don't know, I'm filled with doubt, then, I mean, you're at the wrong spot. But if you're a business owner and you've been going at it a little bit, but self-doubt hits, look, anyone who tells you that they don't suffer from self-doubt is a liar. I've interviewed some of the most successful people on the planet. from a business standpoint. And they all have experienced imposter syndrome. They've all experienced self-doubt at certain times, at certain things that they do. So it's natural, it's part of the game. And usually one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard to get out of like the imposter syndrome side of things is usually you're focused on where you want to be, right? If you have self-doubt, it's because you're focused on where you think you should be and where you actually are. And it's that gap that they live in that causes the anxiety. It's that gap that causes that fear for them because they think they should be at a different place or they don't believe they're good enough, right? And then that's a whole different issue because you're exactly where you need to be. The best advice I ever got is that you're exactly where you need to be. If you weren't, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be where you are. So you're exactly where you need to be. Stop stressing about where you need to be. Do the work needed to get there, but now focus on how far you've come. If you could look at how far you've come, Benjamin Hardy talks about the gap in the game, right? If you could focus on where you've come from and not more about, hey, I should be way ahead and be way over there, you'll be way better off.
Be grateful on the way, huh?
I mean, look at Taylor, all these people talk about loving the journey and needing to love the journey, needing to love what you're at. Self-doubt's part of the game. Imposter syndrome is part of it, right? Like the only people like that don't experience imposter syndrome are psychopaths. So if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, congratulations, you're not a psychopath.